What's going on, guys? Exotic Run Gaming here, and today I'm going to be bringing you a PvE build, the Magicka Sorcerer DPS. And not really much has changed except one set and some CP. It's probably the biggest change that we've had in a while. So we're still running Ilambris. Zon set, I haven't tried it out, but from what I hear and from what I know from the set, it's more of a melee range set just because you have to be a certain distance to use it, or else the damage will break. And when you're in trials, you don't want that to be breaking. So Ilambris is still going to be best because it's going to be landing on top of them. They may run from it, but you never have to worry about that damage breaking. And if the tank is keeping them in place, the boss in place, or whoever, you won't have to worry about the huge damage drop off. So Ilambris still performs best. So we'll get into sets first, armor first, weapons. We'll go into consumables, champion points, skills, and whatnot. So sets first, like I said, Ilambris, one heavy, one medium for that Undaunted passive. Mechanical Acuity. Now, I'm not going to claim to have discovered this because I didn't. I mean, the set was out there, but I didn't think to use it for this purpose. So for my portion of the build, I have to give credit to whoever started talking about this and making it known in the community that Mechanical Acuity is actually pretty nasty, because people have been using it in Clockwork City patch, but with the off-balance changes as well, it's just this works really well now, especially with the champion point changes that we'll have to make due to the exploiter passive not being as good anymore. So Mechanical Acuity, all divines, max magic and chance, all light. Doesn't really matter since it's a crafted set and not like a farmed or picked up set. You can, if you only have, like, say, 2 light Ilambris, you can do a heavy and a medium on here somewhere. So you can do that. What else? Moondancer, 3-piece Moondancer. Just a really strong 3-piece bonus that you can get. You can run a Moondancer lightning staff if you have it. The Asylum's lightning staff is easier to get. And I'll talk a little bit more about why the parse isn't going to look as good as damage you'll be able to do in trial, not just because of raid buffs, but when you're self-applying your own elemental drain, your damage is going to drop off because of a piece on here. But I'll get into that later. And then a VMA lightning staff on the back bar. So I found that this is still, I mean, I called this back in Horns of the Reach. The VMA lightning staff still is BIS for the back bar with a weapon damage and spell damage enchant. Now, you can still, I'm trying to think, you could run Moondancer on both bars. You could run a Moondancer on back bar even, and then the Asylum on the front. You could craft the weapons, since those are harder to get than Moondancer, and then wear Moondancer armor in place. So there's some options and things you can change here. Now, I will note this. While I'm making these changes, I'm doing this because this is BIS, and this is a Trials build and Vet Dungeons. Now, I had originally tested what I always do when a new patch comes out. I always test my build from the previous patch to see how it performs. And so with 2 Ilambris and the Netch's Touch and 4 Moondancer and VMA on the back bar, or even the Asylum staff front bar, both, I was still able to pull, with this patch, I think I peaked at like 38. I mean, I'm sorry, 33.8. So it's still, if you have it and you don't have access to this stuff, like the Moondancer, VMA staffs and stuff like that, you could still run Julianos. That still works well. You could still run Netches and, back bar a Netches staff if you have it, or Julianos. I mean, there are options, and they're all going to still eclipse the 30K minimum for most of the end game trials on bet. So you can still do that stuff. I'm just saying that if you want BIS, my best parse this patch so far has been with Mechanical Acuity, and that was like 35 something, I think 35.2, and that was self-buffed. And that's not exploiting, you know, penetration using the lever stone or anything like that. I mean, this is pure vet trial build setup that I would be using in there. So, I mean, it works really well. And if you want something to farm for to get more DPS, this is going to be the set and the setup to go for. But if anything, if you're following the build from last time, this is just easier to get than my last build was, because you don't need the Netch's Touch, even though it's not a hard set to get. You can just craft the 5-piece Mechanical Acuity. Anyways, but enough on that. Looking at some of the stats, max magic is huge magic pool. I'm gonna probably have to change the enchant on the helmet or something like that from max magic to max health, just to get my health back up to around 16k, because it's kind of low right now. Because you're going to want at least 16k health, 16.2, somewhere around there. Magic recovery, 13, that's good. And heavy attacks now on off-balance enemies. They don't consume the off-balance, but they do give you like twice as many resources. So sustain is actually easier now than it was before. And damage went up a little bit with this set. Asylum Lightning Staff, using shock damage enchant on it, and infused as a high elf and as a sork, you get more damage with lightning abilities, so that's what we're running. Maelstrom Lightning Staff, back bar, already talked about. Nirnhone gives you more AoE damage, like a lot more AoE damage. You could run infused or sharpened if you want to boost your numbers on single target, but Nirnhone is still good. Other than that, that covers that. Let's get into skills. Using Crushing Shock, you can use Force Pulse for more AoE damage, but Crushing Shock, if you're doing Vet Trials, is definitely, even Vet Dungeons, hands down, way more utilitarian, just because you interrupt the targets. So if the boss is doing a one-hit mechanic or something of that nature, Crushing Shock will interrupt it, and that's huge, especially if all your range are using Crushing Shock. Inner Light just for the max magic, gives us a lot of max magic. Elemental Drain for when we're parsing. Conjured Ward for when we are in trial, because the healers will be applying that. Let's see how big our... Hardened Ward. How big our shields are. Like 21k. Massive. Okay. Shot Clench. People recommend Crystal Frags. I know Outcast has it on his build, but I don't know. I personally prefer Shock Clench because, one, it is shock damage, which is already buffed. It counts as technically, I think it's direct damage ability on the initial hit and then AoE damage. Damage over time. So it's kind of getting slightly nerfed from the CP that we choose to use. But it's more reliable damage, and it fits into a rotation way more easily than waiting for a Crystal Frag proc. Because I've done it before using Crystal Frags, and sometimes I'll do a rotation, and before I reset the rotation, a Crystal Frag won't come up. And so that's all that damage I'm losing from Shot Clench. Now, Crystal Frag does hit a little harder, but it just doesn't fit in the rotation as easily. Next is Bound Aegis. That's so much max magic from it. 8%. You get a little bit, you get Minor Ward and Minor Resolve, but that's not really the important part. It's more just the max magic of 8% is massive. And the only abilities that we'd be using in its place probably would be Lightning Form, which does give you a little bit of buff in damage, but you have to be in melee range, and would be Power Surge for self-heals, but you've got a healer in Vet Trials. So if you're doing solo content, definitely Power Surge and Lightning Form. It's called Boundless Storm, Ultimates front bar, Shooting Star. A little bit more max magic. So when you use your heavy attacks, you're restoring more magic from it, and your heavy attacks are doing more damage on your front bar because you have more max magic. Back barring Thunderous Rage. So we're having 2 Destro Staff abilities on total, 1 on each bar. Or 3 total, but you want to have 1 on each bar for the Destruction Staff passives. Liquid Lightning, Haunting Curse, Blockade of Storms, and Mage's Wrath. This is our execute, and this is all of our dots. Where the only dot that's not on that bar is here, but it fits in the rotation nicely the way I set up my rotation, and I'll show you that here in just a little bit. You can be a vampire. I choose not to because the sustain on this build is fine. If you have sustain issues, definitely run vampire, but I didn't see a need to because you have a little bit less damage. You can't take as much damage from fire, from flame abilities. Other than that, just make sure you have all your passives. Make sure you have your alchemy passive, medicinal use, and obviously all your racials and whatnot. So let's get into champion points and just talk about some of the changes that I made. I haven't even haven't placed the other 10. We'll go into green first. So Warlord, we got 10 extra points in each tree, so use them as you may. Really no reason to go higher than 100 here and 75 here. This is why my sustain is pretty good, but I will run out of stamina quite a bit because I don't allocate as much towards things like Warlord and Tumbling. The reason I have Tumbling right now so high here is because I use that over Break Free and things like VMA, and this is what I was doing recently was VMA with this, so I use a little bit more into Tumbling. In this tree, 56 Elfborn, 64 Elemental Expert, 32 Spell Erosion. You can play with this a little bit. Just try and allocate the points where you're not losing too much. You're not having as many diminishing returns, which is why we took quite a bit out of Thaumaturge. I was fiddling around with CP. I was having a hard time. I had a little bit too much into Thaumaturge, so I was checking out some other people and what CP distribution they were using. And this did work out better than having too much into Thaumaturge and taking those points and throwing them into Master at Arms. It makes a world of difference. It's crazy. You could probably even take some of the CP from Elemental Expert since we're light attack weaving and doing one heavy attack. We could buff our light attacks by quite a bit as well from here if we wanted to. And it will scale nicely with VMA staff because those that damage, I don't know how that calculates, but I think it will mix nicely. So let's see here. Yeah, that's pretty much it for there. 61 Ironclad, 32 Spell Shield. I mean, I have 10 points here that I haven't placed yet, so those will probably go into something like, I don't know, Bastion and some into Elemental Defender and Hardy, but 51 Thickskin, 43. You can play with the points how you want. I mean, this tree is really more trial dependent, so it's not really set in stone. Okay, talked about skills and all that. So next up is going to be talking about the rotation. So the rotation is going to start out with applying. Well, I took it off, but you wouldn't have it on your bar. But if you're parsing just to show you how to get that damage, I will put on Elemental Drain. But again, you're not going to use Elemental Drain in Trial. So you apply Elemental Drain, back bar, use a pot, you would drop your Destralt, which I don't have right now, and then go into Liquid Lightning, Light Attack, Blockaded Storms, Light Attack, Haunting Curse, Light Attack, Bar Swap, Light Attack, Force Pulse, Light Attack, Force Pulse, Light Attack, Force Pulse, Heavy Attack, into a Shot Clench Animation Cancel, and then you would bar swap from there. Now, the thing to note here is that the rotation changes when you're doing your own, your self-buffing. So what you want to do is you would want to, I'll have to do 2 rotations to show you how it changes. So what you would do is, because you're not applying Haunting Curse every rotation, and that's why, it's because it lasts long enough to fit through 2 rotations. So what we would do is Liquid Lightning, do that, bar swap, 1, 2, 3, heavy attack, shot clench, and bar swap. And then back into Liquid Lightning, and then bar swap, skip the Haunting Curse. Only do 2 here because we need to apply Elemental Drain. And then bar swap, reapply Liquid Lightning, reapply Haunting Curse, and then we go into 3, and that procs the Asylum Staff. damage. Back bar. Go through it. No liquid lightning. I mean, no haunting curse. 1, 2. And since we can't get a third off because we got to apply elemental drain, so our dots don't run out. And then haunting curse. 2. And you would do 3. So every rotation that you're applying haunting curse, elemental block or LE drain is going to already be on there, and it's going to last till the next rotation if you do it right. So you can hit 3. And that's why when you have someone else come in and help you apply the buffs to, or apply elemental drain to the target dummy, you can land 3 force pulses or 3 force pulse light attack weaves every single rotation. So 1, your DPS goes up in that regard, no matter what staff you use, and 2, it especially goes up if you're using an Asylum lightning staff imperfect, because you have to do it 3 times every 10 seconds. And the way and how long our rotation is, it can't proc off of like bar swap and then restarting the rotation with the force pulse light attack weave. The duration's already gone through, so off of 2, if you do 2 each rotation, this won't ever apply. So that's why you can squeeze a third in there when you don't have to apply elemental drain, but you can't do 3 every time because your dots are gonna, your liquid lightning and blockaded storms will run out too soon. But if you don't do a third, you'll never proc that set bonus, the item bonus, and it does quite a bit of damage, more than having a Moondancer staff here. Moondancer staff will still perform well, so don't get me wrong, you don't have to have this, but I mean, this is easier than getting a Moondancer staff if you ask me, to be honest with you. So that's really the rotation. I mean, any questions, you just let me know, but I will do a full run through here in just a second of the full rotation. That way you get an idea of how it looks real time. So as you can see, I had just done that parse and 36.2k. Took a couple different tries, but yeah, I mean, a lot of potential, and the Mechanical Acuity is going to proc, and when you're in execute and that thing's procking, it's insane. I mean, the DPS just skyrockets. So execute phase is going to go a lot quicker if you're Magicka ranged, and even stamina using this set. The execute phases are going to go so fast, and I mean, this might make some of the trials actually a little easier, even though off balance isn't happening anymore. So heavy attacks for a lot of the stamina tunes is going to be less effective. These execute phases are going to go a little more quickly, I think. So this set is really strong, and it's performing really well right now, but not so overpowered that like it's nerf worthy, especially since they nerfed off balance, so it had to force the change. But I mean, it's performing well. 36.2k in a fully trials build. It's going to work well. I mean, Apprentice Mundus Stone. So I would show the combat metrics on that parse. The only problem is that CMX right now with this patch isn't working. This is UI error. I haven't fixed it yet, and I want to make sure I get this build video out early so people can start testing this stuff and seeing it for themselves, and see if they like it. So I can continue, especially when combat metrics gets hopefully patched or an update for this build. I mean, for this patch and the DLC, I'll be able to do another parse and pull the combat metrics on that and try and replicate the same numbers. That way, it's as similar as possible. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you guys for watching, and hope you enjoyed.